The sun hangs blood-red in the west over the ocean, and with its last turns to gold, the drops of rain hanging on the rusty barbed wire, so that they glimmer like fiery rubies. The day comes to an end. Still camped on this foreign meadow on the edge of Alençon are German soldiers, prisoners of the United States of North America. But we have reason to hope that things will begin to improve for us. Since yesterday, we receive provisions 3 times a day. The individual portions have been doubled for each meal. Milk, butter, white bread and sugar, all the things we have only known in freedom, are now a part of our daily fare. Who is in a position to measure what joy has been brought into the hearts of the once confused prisoners of war? But one had to be a random sacrifice to set the stone in motion. Not one of us knows for sure what really transpired. The guard, as well as the former commandant, have been taken from here. It is further rumoured that up to now the available provisions had been shifted to the French. In any case, even our first sergeant has not been seen by any camp inmate since October 26th. The guards are correct and committed to making our hard situation easier. Today blankets were issued, but the rumours state that the entire camp is going to be disbanded and cleared out. Now, for us at the moment at least, next to a happy return home, there is no greater wish than to leave this hell. I still sit at my place behind the tent. When we arrived here, the barbed wire was new and sparkled like freshly poured lead. Now it sags and is covered with rust between the barbs. The raindrops have stopped. A hateful wetness lies on the wire. Each man should take a piece of it with him home, so that he will be protected from now on from petty and narrow-minded views. "Come in my tent, my boy. It is cold." Schultz tears me out of my contemplation. "Here, Schultz, shouldn't we secure a piece of the barbed wire as a souvenir from Alençon?" I ask him and pull at the wire. "We are still here, my friend. I will never forget this spot on the globe, even without a souvenir. Now come and let's drink our milk before it is completely dark." The 31st of October, 1944. All sergeants are to report on the camp road with their blankets and personal belongings. A call sounds immediately over the graves of the still living prisoners of war in Alençon. Finally, it is true. Shaken, we stare at one another. Some shake their heads in unbelief. To leave Alençon alive? That must be a mistake. How many years have we been here? Are we the last survivors from the Great War? Hurry up, get ready, you fools. Don't stand there like blockheads looking for additional holes in your rotten socks. Briller thunders and rolls his eyes like a wild boar. "And now?" Hocker asks, the dimples having left his cheeks. "Temporarily only a better camp, Willie," is my answer. "Whether it is a better grave, that must be confirmed." Schultz mixes in. "Poland is not yet lost. In a short time we will be free, so let's go." Siegfried drives us out of the tent. Dirty, full of lice, torn, gaunt, a stinking pile. The refuge of the war, that is what assembles on the camp road. A few more than 800 non-commissioned officers of the great German army are counted. Is it really 11, 12 or 14 weeks since all these men stood with weapons in their hands against the enemy, instilling fear and horror in them? Unbelievable. But it is really so. Here, Staff Sergeant Robert Briller, 32 years old, a member of my division. The picture of the ideal soldier, powerfully built, a brunette with a slightly receding forehead, black, jovial eyes, hawk nose, small, turned-up lips, and a vigorous chin. I got to know him in the hospital in Auxerre. At first he imposed himself on me, but later he proved to be a brave soldier and a good comrade. Well acquainted with nearly all the battlefields and whorehouses of this war, he is an example of the modern farm boy. Then Sergeant Willy Hocker, 26 years old, a small fellow, blonde and blue-eyed, a slightly turned-up nose and a girl-like mouth and chin. Always open to the joys of life, he was a soldier of undaunted bravery. A survivor of my division, I got to know him in Paris, where our mutual affinity sealed the unbreakable bonds of friendship. From that moment on, in good as well as bad days, my trusted companion, I now beg to heaven that our future paths will never be separate. The vehicles have arrived and the provisions distributed. The resurrected look at the searchers that have arrived. What do you want? Yes, we know, it is your duty. But put on your gloves, you men from God's own land, otherwise you will be infected with the pestilence in our lousy pockets. The road looms before us. The searchers become helpers. Either with humour or in seriousness, according to their individual nature and temperament, they assist the weak into the trucks. The black drivers start up the motors. In the American camp, the American flag is raised. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. A bugle sounds. "Do we hear the trumpets from Jericho?" Schultz says with a broken voice and wipes his eyes. Slowly, the black soldiers drive their dishonoured white freight out of the camp and turn into the road. Behind the barbed wire walls stand thousands waving a tired goodbye to us men, who in the next days will follow us. Before we reach the first houses, the name of the city stands on a bent sign. A city that will remain burned in the consciousness of more than 20,000 German prisoners of war. Alençon. The city is behind us. Quickly the convoy speeds to the south. Our beards flutter like flags in the wind. Although our eyes have a free and unhindered view over the land coloured by fall, no one sees the beauty of nature. No sound comes from the lips of those raped by the war and barbed wire. A glance into the eyes of our comrades is enough to know we have escaped. But have we really? Mistrust is still awake. No one has said where they are taking us. Only the motor of the truck sings a monotonous sound, as though it was happy itself to take us away from here. At 2 p.m. we reach Le Mans, turn right from the main street, and our goal is in sight. An ocean of barracks and tents, snuggled between low pines and soft ground swells, appears before us. Joyfully agitated, we discover frail smoke clouds rising up from the oven pipes in the kitchen barracks. Where there is smoke, there is fire. Where there is fire, there are people. Where there are people, there is cooking. And where there is cooking means that we will finally get something warm to eat. Dear God, why can't we leave the truck? Why is the convoy turning onto the open meadow? What are the many American soldiers for? Do they really think we could still escape? "Please leave the trucks and line up in 5 rows, a German staff sergeant orders. With feet like clay, we drag ourselves to the assembly place. We are divided into companies. Company leaders are appointed. The American searchers touch us with disgust. But now the blacks come, armed with spray cans and sacks from which they shake white powder as they go through the open ranks. "Unbutton your shirts and pants," the staff sergeant laughs, and soon the blacks are spreading their pulverized poison in the dirty, louse-infested clothes of the men from Alençon. Covered in white like flour mill workers, we stand and follow with all our senses the running and crawling across our skin as the lice poison begins to work. Relieved, we breathe easily as the tenants give up the ghost. "Man, that worked," is the expression from all. The march into the camp begins. The guards have opened the wide gates and allow us to pass by, simply shaking their heads. We make our way into Cage 3 by way of a wide asphalt street which is cleanly washed on both sides and lined with well-fed German soldiers who stand without speaking and as they look at us do not know whether to laugh or cry. Minutes later, Schultz has divided his company into the barracks. Satisfied, we observe our new quarters. A sparkling clean room with straw strewn along the wall on the wood floor. Finally, solid housing. Just as quickly as one heartbeat follows the other, we lie down on our backs on the soft straw which smells of summer and thank the gods for our salvation. But before we are overcome with sleep, the door is thrown open, and a man dressed in the white work clothes of a cook appears and calls us to receive our food. Whether we are awake or dreaming is not clear, but we do get up and step outside in an instant. In the front of each barrack stand 3 tin containers, out of which steam rises, and whose smell threatens to completely confuse our tormented spirits. With the last bit of energy, Schultz is successful in getting the men into rows, and distributes to them the cans with hot food. And now it is my turn. With the feeling of a predatory animal that smells blood, I step up to the bucket and hold with shaking hands my 2 cans under the ladle, which has a capacity of about 1 litre. The can in my left hand is filled with spinach, meat and gravy. 5 potatoes, about the size of tennis balls, are placed in the other can. As quickly as possible, I hurry to a sandhill and kneel to set down the cans that have become very hot. Carefully, I begin to peel a potato with my fingernails, until suddenly all reason leaves me, and in an animal-like eating frenzy, I shovel the potatoes with their skins into me, mixing the gravy and spinach into a fluid to help swallow down the potatoes. After I have also gulped down the meat, I drop to my side exhausted. Black curtains appear before my eyes. I feel sick as a dog. My stomach is turned inside out. My neck is stretched. My first warm meal trickles into the sand. Mechanically, I once again shovel in the unchewed pieces of potato. "That was a bad move, my dear," Hocker whispers to me, annoyed as I open my eyes. "Damn it anyway, how can that happen to me?" I ask, looking at him in amazement as he calmly eats his food in small bites using Schultz's spoon. "Calm yourself, take a look around. All of them are throwing up," is his entire comfort. We lie warm and cozy in the straw. The nausea has eased, and my stomach is as empty as a drum. It is 6 p.m. From outside, they call for us to get our tea. "Are you feeling better?" Brilla breathes in my ear. "Somewhat, I do feel a little better." I smile feebly. "What do you think of this hotel?" he asks, squinting roguishly with his left eye. "It's okay until something better comes along," I answer, satisfied. Earlier, the mess sergeant was with Schultz. According to what he said, the Alenconners, as they call us here, are to receive extra provisions. He maintains that in less than 4 weeks he will have us back to our old selves, the good-hearted Brilla reports, full of hope. "Then let them bring on the food. We have to eat by ourselves." I grin at him happily. "Keep it to yourself this time," he teases, "and don't spit it in the sand again." "It was just too hot and I ate it too fast. That will be a lesson for me." I nod to him. "Here, you lazy stinkers." Hocker hands up a gigantic can of wonderfully smelling hot tea. "Man, where did you get that pail?" We stammer at the same time to the freshly washed Hocker. "Did you fall into a teapot? You shine like a monkey's ass?" Brilla asks him, and carefully takes the handle of the cup after I have carefully taken a few sips of the sweet tea. "No." He beams all over his face. "There is running water in the camp." I am going crazy. Water lines here in this cage? I ask, unbelieving. "Are there also cleaning girls who will fluff up the straw?" Brilla bursts out laughing, causing the tea to go down the wrong pipe. "Boy, that cup is the size of a marmalade bucket. Tell me, where do you get one of those things?" the old farm boy wants to know. "There is a whole mountain of them behind the kitchen barracks," Hocker informs him. "And how is it with the water lines?" I ask, in danger of being laughed at. "Come with me and see for yourself." He acts insulted. "Come on, old man, we are going to go wash," I encourage Brilla. "I can't do it right now." "Look here, my legs are swollen," he says, pointing to his bloated calves and ankles. "You must go to the doctor, Robert. That is a bad sign," I say firmly, so that he will not pass it off. Then I follow Hocker out of the room. Surprised, I stop in my steps. In the meantime, it has become night, but in the camp it is still quite bright. I am astonished. I clear my throat and blink at the electric lights. Like a mountain spring, the silver water dashes heavily over my hands. Childlike, men are playing in the cold wetness. "There is water, friends. Drink yourself dead and you will die happy," a half-crazy shrieks. "Now for a towel and soap, Willie. Then we could really get clean," Hocker expresses across from us. "Even that hour will come, Helmut. You can count on it." He comforts me optimistically, while I take out my dirty handkerchief and wash it for the first time in weeks before I wipe off my face and hands with it. And now listen up for a minute. Schultz speaks to his people as we enter the barracks again. "The Americans require that we keep order and discipline. We are responsible to keep the camp clean. Streets and walks must be kept clean all the time. The same goes for our quarters. In order to organize the cleaning details, I think that we should organize a work detail of volunteers who will be rewarded with extra provisions. I would appreciate it if the longest in rank would take on the responsibility as barrack leader, and those who wish to work can report to them. As far as I can tell in the other barracks, there are enough men who are ready to work. I don't need to tell you that you don't have to work yourself to death. Whoever is willing to work for extra provisions, please raise your hands. Thank you, there are more than enough. Who is the oldest in rank? Your name, comrade?" Good. Staff Sergeant Meyer is assigned as barracks leader here. Who wants to work can report to him. Schultz ends his work for the day as company leader and lets himself fall exhausted into the straw. For the first time, I notice that his beard has been shaved and his hair cut. The upper part of his face is very pale, but free of dirt. He smells of soap. And now, friends, he lifts his head just once out of the straw. Sleep well, we will see our homeland again. The 1st of November, 1944. Exactly at 8 a.m. we are called to get coffee. With large cups in our hands, the men from Camp Alençon stand in double rows behind the coffee containers and breathe in the aroma of the hot drink. At the same time, the personnel in the kitchen are preparing our breakfast, which will be given out one barracks at a time to the barracks leader. Before half an hour has passed, the groups sit in their places, drinking the wonderful bean coffee and eating white bread with marmalade. Cautious because of yesterday's terrible experience, I sip my coffee slowly, although the desire rages bitterly inside me. Once again, it is demonstrated what self-control our comrade Schultz possesses. He takes in no more than what a mother would give her suckling baby. With the exception of Siegfried, whose stomach could apparently digest iron nails, we follow our friend Schultz's example. Admittedly, the provisions that we secured by deceit kept us from nearly starving. We can tell which few, by trading with the Americans or through other means, were able to obtain some extra nourishment once in a while. Naturally, they camouflage themselves by talking about their good constitution and so forth, but the others are not so dumb as to believe it, and the traders and middlemen are well known. Before, the poorest of the poor kept quiet, because in their helplessness they always hoped that something might come their way. But now, with the coming of the Golden Age, they are not bashful about expressing their opinions and showing contempt for the others. Because we have friends involved in these quarrels, and since we do not feel comfortable ourselves, although we did not harm any comrades, we keep quiet about our coup. To our great surprise, one of the men who shared our tent tells how he, with 3 others from our tent, swindled the Americans. They made knives with the iron banding strips and cut the parchment-like paper in which the biscuit boxes were packed into notes the size of 500-franc bills. Then they coloured them with crayons to look like French banknotes and sold them in the dark of night to the American guards for food. After this mean trick is revealed, laughter rings throughout our barracks and we are freed from our own feelings of guilt. In the meantime, it is 10 a.m. and a new joyful event awaits us. The main camp leader stands in the doorway and wishes to speak to Schultz. "Present yourselves for a bath," he says to Schultz, so loud that we all can hear. In unbelief, we all stare at the man. Bath? Where? How? In the camp, in a transportable bath, and with water and soap, naturally. He willingly informs us, and then leaves the room shaking his head. It is exactly 11:30 a.m. as Hocker, 4 companions, and I strip the last rags from our lean and dirty bodies in the dressing room of the bath wagon. But we do not have time for any long observations, because a gigantic black, who functions as the bathhouse master, drives us to hurry with his loud screams. The bath wagon is like a beehive. The coming and going is well organized, but instead of honey, it is the stinking filth that is stripped from the human bodies. "Let's go." A black, standing on the right side of the entrance to the showers, waves to our group and passes each of us a piece of soap, after which we separate under the showers. A torrent of hot water floods over our bodies when they turn a handle on the wall. Just as I am beginning to enjoy my bath, the stream of water stops. "Soap up." The black grins, holding the handle, and shows a row of wonderful teeth as he watches with pride the results of the German words he has spoken while we go to work to soap our bodies. Although it is the best soap, it simply will not produce any foam on our bodies. Once again the black bath master turns the handle. A second shower pours over us. "Let's go," he orders us from the shower room, while another throws an olive-green towel on our heads, and then a moment later collects them without us having had a chance to dry ourselves. We are then shoved into the dressing room, where another black sprays disinfectant over our bodies, just like he has done with the clothing lying on the floor. With a feeling of disgust, We pull on the shirts, which seem more like coal sacks, and jump into our pants and boots, and with our field blouses in our hands escape from the wagon, only to have the lice killer throw our forgotten hats after us. We saunter along the asphalt road to Cage 1, where we reflect on a mosaic work done by the camp inmates. Spread out before us in the sand, and made of white and black stones set down together, is the American flag. "Nicely done," I utter in passing. "It is only a little too wearisome for me." "How many small cans do you think the man got from the Americans for it?" Siegfried asks, hungry. "The talent and the endurance of the man would have been worthy of something better," Schultz says lightly, upset without taking up Siegfried's question. "Let the man have his fun. Perhaps he will be able to preserve his health with it. Some make rings and some gold. He just made a flag." I harmlessly defend the unknown artist. "A flag, when I hear that. He made the American flag. That is what it is about." Schultz flies into a rage. "Don't get excited." I try to calm him again. He really can't lay a swastika in front of the American's door if he wants to earn extra provisions. In my view, the man has no character. The Americans would have recognized other kinds of work, or do they believe that the American prisoners of war in Germany build the German war flag out of stones? He asks, somewhat cooled down. They are in the first place businessmen, and then Americans, at least as far as I have been able to learn. If they can increase their health with busts of Hitler or whatever, they will do it because their thoughts follow a different track than ours. That is not to say that they don't spit on the busts before they prepare them for shipment. We must become more familiar with the mentality of our guards if we want to pull off another swindle. We will not get far with them using a straight-laced Heil Hitler. I pick at Schultz's correct but inelastic thoughts. "Shut up with your wise-ass ideas." Briller mixes in. "They should give us enough to eat, then the whole nonsense will stop by itself." "Right," Siegfried falls in. "They should ship in the feed so that we can begin to think clearly again." That is exactly what they will not do. As long as we are hungry, our thoughts revolve around eating. That way we are not dangerous to them. Hocker also takes part in the conversation. "You are right, Willie. My stomach is growling again. Let's go in the cage. Perhaps in the meantime they have put something else there for us." Siegfried picks up the pace. As we enter the barracks, Schultz is told to go to the camp leader. "What does he want at 9 o'clock at night?" Schultz asks the man angrily. "He didn't say." The spokesman turns, unconcerned, back to his buddies. "In any case, the man turned around and hit the American with 2 hard slaps to the head so that he fell to the ground." The speaker continues his tale, which had apparently been interrupted by our arrival. "Yes, and then?" all of those assembled ask him with curiosity. "Then the sergeant disappeared into the crowd. The American stood up, asked the name of the sergeant, and when no one answered, he turned around and marched back into the headquarters. That is all I know." The man ends his latest news report from the camp at Le Mans. "This could be fun," Siegfried suggests after we sit down in the straw. "The American struck the German from behind without any reason," Hocker adds to the report, since in the meantime he had made inquiries of an eyewitness. 99. The episode is being discussed all over the barracks. While the courage of the sergeant is praised, there is fear of consequences from the Americans. When Schultz returns, we go outside. The camp spokesman thinks that the sergeant should turn himself in if the commandant intends to carry out reprisals against the entire camp. Schultz opens our council. "Now I want to hear your opinion," he says, looking us in the eyes in anticipation. "I think that he should not report," Briller expresses firmly. "That's my opinion also. Besides, it is not for certain that the American will do anything about it. He was clearly at fault. The American hit first. This time he met up with the right man. In fact, I am in favor of hitting back immediately in the future. Who doesn't do it should be assigned to the honey wagon as punishment, since that is work for cowards." Hocker joins in. "That's right, Willie. You have said what I was feeling." I agree. "I also think that the man should be hidden," Siegfried reports. "I see that I am in the right company. I am proud to have such friends. The sergeant already reported to me. He is from the Tank Corps and is ready to turn himself into the Americans, if that is what they want, that is, when the entire camp is to be punished for it. I talked him out of it. Now we will see if unity still exists among the old Germans. This is the appropriate situation to determine it. Then the American hit him from behind without any reason, and right is on our side without question. I am going to go, anyone will step out, explain it to all our comrades. I am anxious to know if against the sergeant, or whether the old saying, one for all and all for one, is still valid. Otherwise I will give up this job and just take it easy. See you later. Schultz departs. The 2nd of November, 1944. We have some real despicable punks in our company. That shames me to be a German and a soldier, Schultz says to me after the meagre breakfast. You must give the men a little time, Schultz. The terrible experience of Alençon is still in the bones of the crowd. None of us are full yet. Everyone still thinks only of food. It will take weeks before we have enough strength for our thoughts to follow their normal course. Not until then can you ask me my opinion. I try to persuade him from his prejudgments. It could be that you are right, but I consider myself too good to represent such characterless scoundrels, he answers as he observes his tin can. What did the men actually tell you last night when you went through the barracks to get support for the sergeant? I ask him in order to have a clearer picture of why he is so upset. Answered? He asks slowly. Yes, that is what makes me so sick. Most of them said absolutely nothing, but some murmured because they fear that the Americans will hang the feed bag even higher. If the Americans identify the sergeant, that means someone from our ranks has betrayed him, and I will go in the desert. He postpones his decision as roll call sounds. You are not Jesus Christ, but even he came back from there and began his work. I offer him for thought after we have left the barracks and make our way to the road, where we meet Hocker, Briller and Siegfried. Comrades, last night there was a regrettable incident on the camp road that appears to threaten our good relationship with the Americans. The camp leader begins his speech after the end of roll call, as the American officers in charge of the roll call look up in the sky. According to the Americans, the man who struck down the soldier last night is to report for a hearing. He has until 11 o'clock to do so. If he is too cowardly to turn himself in, then Cage 3 can expect their provisions to be withheld. Dismissed. Silently the crowd disperses. The men come back together in groups in front of the barracks. The troublemakers meet in the latrine. After about 20 minutes, a pair of representatives of the majority opinion come to Schultz. Nothing can happen to the sergeant since he acted in self-defense, they say. In his position as company leader, Schultz should order the man to report. It would be nonsense for the entire cage to go hungry, because someone is too cowardly to stand up for what he did. The company is to assemble in front of the barracks, Schultz answers, and points with his finger to the barracks exit, and like whipped dogs they leave our quarters. Don't take a vote, Schultz, warns Siegfried. Let the reins loose, counsels Briller. Don't burn your fingers, Hocker adds. Do what you think is right, are my last words on the matter. Who is in favour that the man, who last night on the camp road was hit by an American soldier and who defended himself from his tormentor with 2 blows, should go to headquarters and receive his punishment? Please step to the left. Schultz demands in one sentence that the assembled company of Cage 3 decide for themselves. After a short pause, movement begins in the ranks, and more than half the group move to the left side. The sergeant, please come forward, Schultz calls with a stone face. Tension-filled minutes pass, but the man does not come in front of the company. Slowly, Schultz goes along the front rank, looking in every face. Upset, he then returns to the centre. Where is the tank sergeant? He asks more himself than the men in the company. A tall man from the tank grenadiers goes towards Schultz. Curiously, the men, now divided into 2 ranks, fix their attention on the man, who speaks softly to Schultz until a handshake ends the conversation. The man has already gone to the Americans. Someone betrayed him last night. That is the work of a pair of miserable creatures, but the majority is in agreement. It is a scandal to be with these rogues as long as there are men dying on the front for whom the expression comrade is not an empty word. For me personally, no one should expect that I will continue to play the jackass on whose back this characterless horde can ride. As of now, I willingly resign my position and will inform the camp leader of it immediately. Schultz ends his speech and calmly leaves the cage. The pretender can go to the devil. He only took the position in order to get better provisions, observes a skinny corporal with insane fire in his eyes. We don't want a calcified rod as our company leader anymore, another says. We don't need any leader at all. Something to eat and peace is what we want, sounds throughout as the crowd disperses. We have beans, carrots and corned beef for lunch. The whole thing is cooked with potato powder and tastes wonderful. Feelings have calmed down. Bent over the plates, we shovel into our bodies the food that has so long been withheld from us. The sergeant is forgotten. Schultz has returned from the company leader. The Americans have already demanded his removal since they were informed already about his conduct. Downcast, we friends stretch out in the straw and fall into a restless afternoon sleep. Around 4 p.m., a shrill whistle brings us back from dreamland. In front of the barracks, someone bellows that before evening roll call, the company must choose a new leader. We remain lying in our places. They can worry about that themselves, Brilla indicates lazily, and with such a great yawn that he cracks his jaw. Our friend Schultz, who in the beginning could find no sleep, turns completely over on his back and continues to snore peacefully. Our new company leader is introduced at evening roll call. He is no man of importance. Grey, uneasy eyes look out from black-framed glasses almost spitefully at the company. He is of small build, and the silver star of a lance corporal glittering in the sunlight gives the impression he is a slimy pusher. The American sergeant, to whom he reads the attendance report, does not thank him for his salute, but instead looks past him and moves on to count the soldiers himself. Before the U.S. sergeant has left the camp, the entire crowd disperses without giving any attention to their new company leader. It is even worse when the food is distributed. Like wild sows, they all shove their way to the food containers brought by the kitchen personnel, and everyone tries to push the other from the bucket. Helpless but full of rage, Schultz's replacement stands before the men and watches the resulting chaos as his first words about order and discipline flutter, unheard in the wind. Already most are murmuring about the obvious inability of their new spokesman, but now it is too late. Among prisoners of war, it is not enough to have 2 stars on the shoulder in order to create respect, but simply and singly one personality. When the kitchen personnel finally become tired of the whole scene, they hold their ladles under crossed arms and refuse to give out any more food until the wild herd becomes reasonable again. Naturally, the final result of this unbridled behavior is that we end up spending twice as long standing around. Again, Schultz proves his pure character in this critical situation. Immediately after the food is issued, he sets his 2 cans down by us and goes through the barracks. I ask you, comrades, he says in each building, be reasonable and follow the instructions of my replacement. He certainly gives it with the same good intention that I did. I ask you to consider that the Americans keep a watchful eye on what we do. They will certainly not listen to a company leader who cannot establish and maintain discipline among his group. I have established a good impression among the American camp leaders. This camp is, I believe, in good hands. It is only up to us what we make of it. Order, cleanliness, discipline, actually the natural characteristics of our people, and firm control are the things with which we can accomplish nearly everything in our camp. It is not always important who demands something, but the main thing is for whom it is ordered. Again, I ask you in your own interest and in the interest of everyone to stay together. Then we will be able to come through these hard times in prison. The 10th of November, 1944. It is too bad, really too bad. This hair could be worked into a nice wig, the man says over me while he is busy with the scissors and comb cutting my long mane back to the length of a matchstick. They are more suited for a street broom, Brilla laughs next to me, unashamed about his own joke, hindering his barber. The men from Alençon sit in a wide circle under the clippers. Last night we received Red Cross items. Each 2 men now possess a razor, 2 blades, a brush, and a piece of American shaving soap. In addition, everyone received 10 cigarettes, No wonder that today great joy rules in the cage. But now the barbers are at work. Schultz is one of the first who parades back into the cage completely clean. In amazement, I stare at the well-known stately figure with the nearly completely new face. Clean-shaven, the hair cut and combed, freshly washed, with a cleaned suit and polished boots, he stands before me smiling while the machine is directed under my chin by the trained hands of the barber. What a man, I think. Certainly he would be the object of attention by many women if they would let him out to promenade on a boulevard or a street. I have something to announce to the company, our company leader says after evening roll call. The Americans are pleased with the cleanliness of our cage, especially the barracks and the latrines. They were also very pleased with how we looked today after the barbers were here. Unfortunately, there are still some among us who are unshaven and unwashed. The barbers have been instructed to report here tomorrow between 10 and 12 o'clock. Bathing is at 2 o'clock p.m. By this time it would be very nice if the last ones would leave the bath wagon shaved and with their hair cut. I ask the barracks leaders to see that such will be the case. It is in our own interest not to tolerate anyone among us who does not keep his body clean. One thing additional to announce. There are school classes being offered in Camp 2. Every afternoon there are lectures on literature, art history and philosophy. Whoever wants to do something for their education can show up there each day. Silence. He interrupts himself as the statement about the lectures brings forth some muttering. Now we come to the last and most important point for today, he continues. There have been rumours that tonight we would be able to write. I have the following to say about that. After the food is distributed, the barracks leaders can obtain writing paper from me. Every man can have only one sheet. If you ruin it, you cannot get a second one, since they will be counted out exactly. Only letters that are written on this special paper will be sent to Geneva. You cannot identify any places, no political or military commentary or things of that sort. Only those things of a familiar nature, for example. I have landed in prison and I am doing well. No way! The entire group bellows in response to these words and disperses. Such garbage! I am doing well! You can hear the men curse as they hurry into the barracks to get their eating utensils, since it is nearly time for supper. After finishing the evening meal, we friends are tightly squeezed together with the writing paper in our hands. There is a continuous roar of voices in the barracks so that it is impossible to think clearly. I will report to the folks at home the pure truth about our conditions here with the Americans. Someone screams and waves his white sheet of paper like an important document over his nearly clean-shaven skull. You fool! Another bellows, laughing. Then your letter will end up in the wastebasket and the people at home will know nothing of you. So lies, nothing but lies, is what we are to serve up to our relatives at home, observes a sword-thin sergeant. Then I will avoid writing anything. That's right, a couple of others join in. We refuse to write if we cannot report the truth. Such idiots, thunders Schultz and gets up from his straw mat. Listen up. He turns toward everyone. Be a little reasonable, men. It is nonsense what you are prattling. What good will it do your relatives to know the truth? Nothing but worry, once they are finally free of the uncertainty about your situation. They know anyway that imprisonment is no visit to a resort. Besides, such a letter will never get out of the camp. Look at the little sheet. Do you think you can write very much? Let your relatives know that you are still healthy, that you hope to see them and your homeland again, that life behind barbed wire can be endured, and call on them to have courage, even to hold out so that together we can go about healing the wounds of this war. Don't forget that we had a censor in the German army, and there it was not possible to report back to the homeland about the negative aspects of the theatre of war, because they simply did not want to see relatives at home upset. Let's please have some quiet within these four walls, so that we can finally get down to writing. The largest part of the men agree with him, as Schultz lies back down on the straw. It really is true, damn it anyway. Sometimes this place seems like an insane asylum, he says to us, and looks with a furrowed brow at the lined sheet of paper in his hands. About 9 o'clock the letters are collected and taken to the camp leader. There is almost a festive calm in the barracks. Everyone is alone with his thoughts. Germany, the homeland, How are our loved ones? The 15th of November, 1944. The new day is cold and foggy. The devil is loose in the camp, a broken voice announces behind me as I wash my upper body with cold water. The Stars and Stripes made out of stone was destroyed during the night. The Americans are withholding this morning's coffee, and the threat of cutting off our provisions hangs over the entire camp. Rocks throughout the washroom. Fallout by companies along the street. A call sounds in our wet ears. Here we go again, says Siegfried in our concerned silence. What idiots were at work? How can someone be so dumb as to bring the entire camp into difficulty with his impertinence? I am overcome with anger. The fellow must be punished by us. Schultz also boils over. Let's go, Hocker says, depressed. We take our washing and shaving items back to the barracks. A storm of indignation rages in our quarters. Such imbeciles should be beaten, a choir of voices sounds in unison. No, the one who put the flag together to enrage us should be whipped, can be heard from one corner. It did not bother me at all. It does not matter what someone does to get something to eat, comes from another direction. Yes, as far as I am concerned, they can put Caesar Nero either in charge or on top of our shithouse as long as my plate is filled up 3 times a day. Another speaks out. Come out, I will cover you with shit, you monkey. Stop, this is not the way, men. Schultz steps in. Fall out. Someone tears open the door and slams it against the wall so that the dust comes out. They can lick our asses. Someone goes after the man. Damn it anyway, come out. The black glasses of the company leader appear in the doorframe. All hell has broken loose. The spirits are confused, the weak nerves are ready to snap, and the empty bellies call for the nourishment that we have become used to. Hunger, the most terrible ghost on earth, floats over the camp, grinning and showing the poor, half-insane men its ugly face. Along the camp street stand the companies of the prisoner of war camp Le Mans. The entire leadership of the camp is on their feet. The brown figures of the American guards armed with red clubs scurry around the entire camp like chickens. Rain starts to fall softly. The whole theatre makes me sick. The counting begins. As every day, the rosters are compared. A second counting follows. The Americans are nervous. The count does not agree. Guards are sent through the empty barracks. They return without success. 8 men have disappeared. A third count brings the same result. Camp 3 is ordered to the barracks. The barracks leaders must stand in the door with their rosters, and the men must sit at their places. 8 prisoners have disappeared during the night. They chose freedom. Slowly the pressure on the hearts of the imprisoned is released, and they glide slowly into a satisfied smirk. There are still real men among us who have not been broken by all the misery that has come upon us. Now they are gone from us. May their fate be a merciful one. At 11 o'clock, breakfast is issued. The mess sergeant is ordered to return 8 portions to the camp leaders. A truck loaded with items for our noon meal is being unloaded by the kitchen. The Americans have decided against any reprisals. This time we were mistaken, Schultz, I admit freely as we sip the hot coffee. It was still foolish for the escapees to destroy the flag and leave their visiting card behind. It would have been easy if the entire camp would have had to do penance for it, and if they are captured, then they will also be punished for the act, he answers, not completely without envy for these men whose courage is being spoken about throughout the entire camp. What do you think, Schultz? Shouldn't we make our way eastward? Siegfried hazes him in good spirits. Shut your mouth. It still eats at me because these boys did not have any trust in me, even though I knew one of them very well. He is from my hometown and is a well-known athlete there, Schultz responds. He will say hello to your little wife if his flight is successful. Siegfried continues to tease him. Knock it off, I tell you, you damn asshole! Schultz roars, completely out of composure, and glances around the barracks with hate-filled eyes. Astonished, we look at each other. Slowly the connection comes to me. Stay here, I will talk with him, I say, and follow Schultz. Does the man know your wife? I ask with little diplomacy, coming right to the point. Yes, is the toneless answer from his lips, as he puts his right foot onto a sandhill, shoves his hands into his pockets, and gazes out over the barbed wire eastward. Perplexed, I pick a piece of straw from my field jacket and twist it playfully in my hands. Very well, I ask after a pause. Yes, that's the hell of it. They were once friends, he discloses. And you hope that the escape is not successful? I bore further. As a soldier, yes. As Mr. Schultz, no, he answers coldly. A twisted affair, I say slowly. Don't you have any trust in your wife? Yes, he turns to me, but no longer any in him since he disappeared without saying goodbye. Now I remember the man. Is he the tall, slender sergeant from the Tank Grenadiers that you spoke with from time to time? I ask curiously. That's him, he answers, taking a cigarette from his ration package of 6 cigarettes. My God, he smokes. No, he sticks it back in and puts the pack away. Hey, give me a light, comrade, he calls to a passer-by and pulls the cigarettes once again from his pocket. Here, Helmut, smoke one with me, he says, subdued, and lights a cigarette on the match that is offered to him. Thank you. He dismisses the man as thick clouds of smoke begin to encircle him. Damn it, it is still raining. He acts amazed as he hands me the match, and the white cigarette paper shows grey spots. Ah, that does not taste good anymore. Why are we smoking anyway? He asks in his confusion, throwing the cigarette into the wet sand and spitting contemptuously afterward. What do you think about trying to escape? I mean, do you think it could be successful? He asks suddenly. The chances are 1 to 99. Whoever just takes off without any preparation has no chance at all. I answer him coolly, since the purpose of his idea is clear to me. Do you believe the 8 men will make it? He asks further. I hope so, I respond. My acquaintance speaks fluent French and is not conspicuous in his appearance here in France. That is a powerful advantage for him. He nods his head several times in recognition of the ability of his adversary. Listen to me, Schultz. I pull my confused friend toward me. The man who is causing you to worry knows your wife. They were once friends. Good. He also knows you and apparently your one weakness, your love for your wife. I have put myself in his place and considered why he did not tell an acquaintance whose character he knows well. You were not the best of friends. Otherwise you would not have joined with us. A predecessor is always painful for a man, but we have little interest in the one who comes afterward. Stop. He tries to interrupt me. Be quiet. I am talking now. I deflect him. So the man said to himself that you are jealous of him, and in such a condition might not think clearly and could jeopardize his escape. I tell you openly that if I were in his situation I would not have done any differently. Finally, he was also responsible to the 7 others. But believe me, he did not undertake the escape because of your wife. That is behind him, either because he lost her to you or because she was just a passing affair for him. Who is in love does not believe that what is so important to him is of little interest to another. But it is really so. I will prove to you that the escape of this man does not have the slightest thing to do with your wife. He went through the wire into a dangerous freedom. Assuming that he is successful in getting back to Germany, which would take weeks, then he must calculate that your letter from here has already reached her. With the difficult military situation in Germany, he cannot assume that he will be allowed much time before he is once again sent to the front, where he is in real danger of becoming another victim of the war. It is absurd to think that someone would take on such a danger just to try and take another man's wife, even if it were possible, while on the other hand there is an almost certainty that her husband will return home healthy and well. No, my friend. There are other reasons that drove him out of this cage. Lack of freedom, humiliation, depression, and all that which we call barbed wire sickness is enough to explain his escape. Send your fears to the devil. With a man like you, such abnormal complexes are a basic contradiction to your personality. You must be told that. Don't be mad at me because I am the one that does it, but don't forget what I have told you and wish your acquaintance all the best luck for his flight. He will need it. It's time for lunch. Let's get our plates, he says, overwhelmed at my words, and turns tiredly to go. What do you think, Helmut? Are you going with us for the class? Siegfried asks me after lunch. Yes, of course, I answer him. I still have to make up some classes. Then get out of here so that we can sleep, Brilla hisses at us. I'm going with you. Hocker decides at the last moment and receives a disapproving smirk from Brilla. Sleep good. We wish the two lazy fellows and make our way to school. It may be that for most of the prisoners of war in this camp, it is presumptuous or even quite crazy that in our situation we organize a school. One of the prisoners opens his lecture after a short welcome. Even the stiff soldier's coat cannot hide his civilian profession, but the fact that the tent is completely filled confirms for me that this undertaking is right, that the desire for knowledge within the barbed wire, especially among the younger generation, is big enough to justify a series of planned lectures. It may be that this or that comrade who is present today will stop attending sooner or later, since he is only here out of curiosity, but there will be others who come who are not only tired of the boredom in the barracks, but simply because they seek intellectual nourishment. In order to take all the wind out of the sails of possible intrigues in advance, please allow me to say that the idea to undertake a kind of school instruction does not come from pure love for our neighbour. The teaching faculty who are present have no other reason in their hearts or minds than to prepare themselves for their civilian occupation. That may sound quite brazen, but if you are smart, you will take advantage of it and become smarter with our help. Knowledge is power, ignorance is weakness. It is up to each individual with what knowledge he will take up the struggle for existence in the homeland. With this explanation, I think I have painted a realistic picture for you, and now turn the time over to Comrade Piotrowski, a future professor of literature. The sincere man finishes his speech, and a frail little man in his 50s climbs onto the box which had served his predecessor as a podium. Ah, our boys are here. Schultz receives us sitting in the straw, well rested. Where did you leave your school packs? Brilla kids us in a good mood. Your brain is already dying, otherwise your hair would grow again. Siegfried strokes his bald spot. Just the opposite, my dear. When the understanding comes, then the hair must retreat, Brilla trumps. Nonsense, hair does not grow on chalk, Siegfried says, already bored. By the way, what do you hear about supper? He swings around and sniffs in the air. Cheese? Hocker asks. That is what it smells like. Siegfried circles with his nose until we all break out in ringing laughter, and finally he also discovers Brilla's naked feet. Get out of here and wash your tank treads, he orders the old farm boy, who sits grinning and massaging his toes. I was just in the process of leaving, but your appearance kept me back, Brilla discloses and then leaves. Because of the misty rain, we are forced to remain in the barracks. Night comes earlier. In our barracks, there is the depressed mood of a useless November day that has passed. I thought about your words from this morning, Helmut, Schultz says to me after supper. Did your reflection do any good, Schultz? I ask, at the moment little interested in his conversation. Yes, but I notice that I came at a bad time for you, he answers, disappointed. It is past. Go ahead, shoot. I am all ears, I encourage him. Okay, the situation is just right since the others are still washing. To make it short, he begins, I agree with your point. At the time, this sports star left my wife in a bind when she could have used a good friend. I know that she was blinded by his passing fame, and that is why she gave herself to him. He revealed himself to be a scoundrel, something that she will certainly never forgive. If she was only blinded by his fame and became friends with him, then she did not deserve anything better than to be misused, I say objectively. Show me your better side, otherwise in the future I must keep everything inside. The large man pleads for understanding for his feelings. Were you the man who saved her from her miserable situation after the other one refused? I ask now, completely tuned in to the matter. Yes, I had seen her earlier, he answers. Did she notice you earlier? I probe further. She was not indifferent to me. There is plenty of proof of that, he answers laconically. Did you try to get closer earlier? I hold tight. No, never. I was afraid of this woman. She was too beautiful and light-minded, something that one man seldom possesses alone. So why in the hell did you marry her anyway? I ask. Because everything in me longed for her. I simply could not do otherwise. We both would perish because of it, he acknowledges in a curious happiness. A man like you does not die because of feelings, Schultz. Something like that can be overcome. It appears to me that you were dragged into the whole thing and could not get out of it honourably. I express my suspicion. Now you are sitting in the wrong train. Nothing had occurred before I asked her to be my wife. He smiles. Yes? Then did you buy the cat in a sack? My patience slowly disappears. Watch out. What do you think I am? He becomes indignant. Then damn it anyway, something did happen before, I insist. Please, not so loud, this is only our business. He puts the brakes to me and continues softly. Apparently you are too young to understand everything. A man becomes responsible only when he is the first one. Obviously that was not the case with us. The will to do it, and the pleasure that it brought, was equally large on both sides. Any obligation did not come from it. That is only for your enlightenment. No, it was just love which caused us to be married. You can sleep with anyone and go with everyone. All you need is a little sympathy. Man, Schultz, I don't understand you anymore. Your wife was once a little loose, as you said yourself. You knew her for a long time. She was never indifferent to you. You did not make a play for her earlier. You were afraid of her. She was too beautiful and light-minded for you. Okay, that is an everyday story. Then somehow she ended up in a dilemma. You played the knight and then slept with her. To this point I understand you. That is a normal course, a logical point of conclusion. But excuse me, you don't marry something like that. And where is your former fear of her beauty and her light-mindedness? Where did this sudden unconquerable love come from on both sides? And how do I explain it against your distrust today? I press my interrogation. Are you afraid of a little rain? I do not want to have any listeners when I tell you the pure truth, but the others will be returning any minute, he says instead of answering me, and gets up. We leave the barracks together. It is still raining. Shivering lightly, we press ourselves against the back wall of the barracks and sink our hands into our pockets. An awful night, I think, as Schultz picks up the conversation in a dampened voice. After I got my degree, I entered into the banking business with my uncle and got acquainted with a beautiful girl. The First World War was just over without me having to become a soldier. The men were in shortage, just like the food, but the people were already looking to the gold bag. That did not bother us at all. After the bank closed, we gave each other a quick kiss in the stairwell, and then met each other nearly every evening in a nearby park. We loved one another, but still it did not go further than kisses. A year later it was explained to me that it could go no further because my great love came from poor circumstances. Her father was killed during the war. Her mother earned a living working in a factory. Outwardly I obeyed, but I promised my love that I would marry her later, and went to work with great energy to earn enough to stand on my own 2 feet. Half a year later she was married to an old codger. Finished, over. From then on I looked at women with other eyes. Love was not enough. I learned about pleasure in its place. So I deceived everyone and let myself be deceived by everyone. The years passed. One day I saw her again, in the arms of another, beautiful, reckless, and very young. It was in a night bar with red and green lights. I admit I was slightly drunk. We had visited most of the bars in the vicinity, celebrating a birthday. But on Sunday afternoon I awoke with a clear head and remembered clearly the young, beautiful girl in the arms of a man who could have been her grandfather. That evening I looked for her in the bar, but she did not come. 4 months later I met her in a clothing store. She did not overlook me, but did help a salesgirl persuade me to buy a shirt that I did not like at all. I would like to get to know you better. How about a cup of coffee? I asked her on the street. You can read my thoughts, she said. I would really like to. We conversed over coffee about the shirt I bought and parted as acquaintances. I used the following weeks to observe her. She was a little bitch. Again and again I arranged it so that we met by chance. One evening in April she was apparently free, and so she accepted an invitation to a dance. Afterward we drank coffee in my bachelor apartment until 4 o'clock in the morning. After Easter I saw her again at a sporting event at the side of our escapee. Then it happened. They ignored her and treated her like filth. The man also showed her the cold shoulder. After she asked him to leave the event, he continued to converse with the respectable daughter of a town councillor. I saved her from this humiliation by asking her to dance with me and then taking her home. The next day she called me in my business and thanked me sincerely. A month later, in response to her request, I found her a job and a cheap apartment. She was healed. At the beginning of September 1938, I returned as a sergeant from my 8 weeks of training to my home city and took up my work again. Some days later, I held her savings book in my hands. At the beginning of each month, she had paid in 50 marks. Immediately, I got in touch with her and congratulated her, and she invited me to dinner in her apartment, the one I had arranged for her. For the first time, I got to know her. She was not only very beautiful, but also an excellent homemaker and hostess. On September 16th, we celebrated her birthday together. She paid for the first meal, and I for the second. She paid for the first bottle of wine, and I for the second. Later, in her apartment, she prepared coffee that would have brought the lame to walking. From radio station Luxembourg, we heard slow dance music. We had found one another. At Christmas, I asked her to become my wife. She nearly drowned in her tears and begged me to leave everything as it was, so that we would not upset my family and friends. A week before Easter, we were married. I had trouble finding enough witnesses. After the wedding, we ate in a hotel and then travelled to spend 8 days in the Harz Mountains. It was a beautiful and happy time. War came in September. I was in Poland on her birthday and in Denmark when our daughter was born. Since then, my wife has become sick. Her stomach is ruined. Now you know. Say what you want, I have nothing to regret. A strange love story, my good friend, and no longer something ordinary for me. Your happiness did cost you something, but I understand you, and we have to pay for everything. I respond, full of sympathy, looking into the dark night which does not allow any star a glimpse of this earth. Yes, that is the way it is, Helmut. Sooner or later one must pay for everything. In the end, the bill is paid, and we laugh at the completely unnecessary struggles of our youth. He agrees softly, and leaves without paying any attention to the mud holes, as the dirty water splashes to the sides under his quick steps. The 19th of November, 1944. The pale sun spreads its sparse beams over the thick clumps of earth-coloured, torn figures of the prisoner of war camp Le Mans. An interrogation is in process. We friends have it behind us and stand condemned as Nazis, with another 300 prisoners on the other side of the majority of the prisoners. It is not easy to be recognized as a Nazi, since the American investigators apparently do not need many. This time the Americans spent a long time with Schultz before he sent him into the right corner. Even Hocker's outstretched index finger pointing to the right corner is not enough. The American wants to know today exactly what we think, but we do not permit him this favour. He is given such foolish answers that he must consider all of us crazy. In the end, each one has reached his goal. We are together again, and the Americans have their Nazis.